Good, I'm recording now. Boom. Boom. Cool. So last week we had Labor Day, so obviously we didn't have class. However, I posted stuff about the final project, so you all know about that. I asked about any teams you want to work in. Today, everybody submitted all their final answers because, obviously people submit their answers to what team they want to work with, which was the lecture question at like 11 o'clock last night, like right before it's due. So I haven't seen it yet because I've been in, I woke up, drove here, and I've been in meeting class. So hopefully tomorrow I will look at everybody's answers and I'll put teams together. So by the end of the week, you'll have your teams. You don't have to do anything with your team yet. Next week, we'll actually talk about the first step, which is the action plan and how to work with your team and get started. So don't worry too much about the final project yet. Putting my phone on silent. But we will hopefully submitted somebody you want to work with, or you said I don't want to work with anybody or whatever. And yeah, besides that, this week we have lecture question due, which I will give you all. We have your first homework, which is over chapter 1. Everything I covered today, I did my best to cover everything that's going to be in the homework. So if you listen to this lecture, you go back and watch it, you'll probably do great. As a reminder, the homework's going to look scary when it pops up because it's going to say quiz. That's just because I found it's the easiest way to put it in Blackboard. I give you infinite time. It's not due till Sunday at 11:59. You can start it, stop it as many times as you want. You can look up all your answers, all that stuff. So don't feel like you have to sit down and take this scary quiz. It just says quiz. It's a homework. They're 10 questions long. Students on average do great on them. I would say out of 30 points, the average score is usually between 26, 27 points, which is pretty good. So you all do fine. So there's a homework. That'll take you about 30 minutes. And then we also do a case study and an assessment this week. Syllabus said that the assessment was what we were going to do last week. I pushed it to this week so I can talk about it at the end of class and because it pertains more to what we're doing this week and next. The assessment will take you 20 minutes to do. And then the case study we're going to do in class. So if you're here listening, you'll get the case study done right now. So it's really not that bad. This week just looks loaded, but it's not bad. This week we are covering self-awareness. So real quick, I'm going to end this poll and let everybody see the results of just the few people that answered here. Here in class, you're welcome to let me know. Do you think you could beat a rat in a fist fight? Yeah. You think you could beat a large dog in a fist fight? Yeah. Do you think you could beat a gorilla in a fist fight? Iffy? Iffy? Okay, so our results showed, interestingly, a little over half of the people that voted here, pretty much everybody in class says that they could beat a rat in a fist fight. Less people believed they could beat a large dog in a fist fight. But what's interesting is the two people that said yes, they could beat a large dog in a fist fight, I'm guessing are the same two that said they could beat a gorilla in a fist fight. Now, the reason that's interesting and the reason I asked everybody that question is because this week we're talking about self-awareness. So let me share my screen here real quick. I can't talking to the other room. Recognize her voice anywhere. There you go. Perfect. So, Newsweek did this poll. It's actually been pretty popular for a long time. Just to keep in mind, this is the Newsweek version of this poll. This poll has been asked multiple times to multiple different groups of people, and the results are almost always identical. And I can tell you a little bit more about the results that Newsweek doesn't say, because I've seen this poll so much. 72% of people believe that they can't beat a rat in a fist fight, which is crazy to me. Surely any adult can kill a rat in a fist fight. Yeah, just smack, But 85 to 90% of Americans are able-bodied and active enough, meaning they can climb a flight of stairs, move things. They should all be able to kill a rat. And then we go to house cat at 69%, which is low, but cats are wispy, man. A goose, which is interesting because if you to beat it, you have to kill it or defeat it. Then a goose makes sense because it can fly. So maybe that's a problem. Medium dog, I get it. That starts getting scarier. So now we're about half and half. An eagle, same thing as the goose, but eagles are scary. Large dog, 17% of people believe they can beat it in a fist fight. Now here's the turning point. 9% of people think they can beat a crocodile in a fist fight, which doesn't even make sense. 8% of people think they can beat a gorilla in a fist fight. 8% of people think they can beat an elephant in a fist fight. 8% of people say a lion, and 6% say a bear. I don't know how the hell a bear is lower than a lion or an elephant or a gorilla. I feel like they're roughly the same. But these results are repeatedly the same across any time we survey this. I should be fair and say the majority of the 6 to 8% are what gender? Men. They're almost always men. If you didn't know, it's almost always men that say that they can beat these things, not the other way around. Just to put this in perspective, does anybody know who that is?
Thor.
Close, actually. I know who you're thinking of. This is Brian Shaw. Brian Shaw, by many, is believed to be the strongest man to ever live. He's the 4-time world's strongest man. He's 6'8", he weighs about 430 pounds. At one point, he was up there with the highest deadlifts of all time at around 1,100 pounds, so 1,100 pound deadlift. There are men that have out deadlifted him. Thor's out deadlifted him. However, Brian Shaw consistently across all lifts is one of the strongest men to ever live. We don't know exactly what his grip strength is because they've never fully tested it. However, at the sports complex in Denver, they had him hit a punching bag. It was the first time he said he'd ever really thrown a full force punch, and it was the highest recorded hit they've ever had at the complex. Okay, never really thrown a punch. First punch, actually, I think it was technically a slap. He hit this machine with his hand. So he is a monster. Okay? A gorilla. So I'm guessing he's America's our. Wow, why isn't this going here? He's probably our best shot. It was so hard to find a non-intimidating picture of a gorilla. This was the best I could get. The average gorilla is 6 foot tall and around 430 pounds. So close to Brian Shaw, actually a little bit shorter. This is where the wheels fall off. The average gorilla can lift 1,800 pounds up to 2 tons. That's 2,000 pounds. It is suggested that pound for pound, a gorilla is 10 times stronger than any human. So a 100-pound gorilla will be 10 times stronger than a 100-pound human. It actually escalates at lower degrees. To make this even crazier, the average human sprints around 16 to 17 miles per hour. The fastest a human's ever sprinted is 27 miles per hour. There's Usain Bolt. An NFL player sprints around 22 miles per hour. Brian Shaw is probably around that 15 to 16 miles per hour because even though he's huge, he's pretty agile. A gorilla is 25 miles per hour, making him slower than Usain Bolt, but faster than an NFL football player. But the same size as Brian Shaw while being almost twice as strong. Also, Brian Shaw's pull-up record is 7, which is actually impressive because he's 430 pounds. Gorillas spend around 20% of their day in trees that they climb. And 1/10 of men, let's be honest, believe that they can beat this in a fist fight. Kill it in a fist fight, which is crazy. Go ahead.
We have something they can't. They can only really go effort for 15 minutes. If you can just keep out of range for 15 minutes, they get exhausted super fast.
20 as
Dude, just get them.
So you can be a gorilla.
Listen, if I can keep out of range long enough and get it to be tired, it'll just be on the ground overheating while I can bash its head in with my fist.
Toot my own horn for 1 second. I ran college track, so I probably run at like the low 20 miles per hour. And I was a gymnast before that, and I don't think there's any way in hell I could keep away from a gorilla for more than 5 seconds before it run me down. There's just no way.
Is it a fist fight, or can I have a wireless?
No, it's fist fight. It's hand fist fight. That's the whole point, right? Because obviously with a gun or whatever, you know, and yeah. So this is self-awareness. Now, before we jump in here, this week's objective is to better understand your own, uniquenesses, better equipped to manage yourself. And I'm not making fun of the people that said yes. Some of them might have done it in jest, or maybe they believe it. I don't know. Maybe they know something I don't know. Whatever. Help you diagnose value and utilize differences in others. So self-awareness, before I get too far into it, I don't have a slide on this, but I want to talk about this really quick. We know that managers that have high self-awareness are better at managing people, and they're more successful generally themselves. Self-awareness just across the board is a good trait to have. It's having self-awareness in yourself helps you understand individuals better, the people that work for you, your own strengths and weaknesses. Also, people that have high self-awareness tend to have what we call a lower sensitivity line, which we'll talk about in a bit. But very importantly, your self-awareness can adjust. And one of the best ways to do it is through experience. And I don't have a slide talking about that, but experience is the tell-all be-all for self-awareness, basically. If any of us had to go fight a gorilla once afterwards, we'd have a pretty good idea if we could actually kill it or not. We'd be like, you're crazy. Or if you had worked with gorillas for a while, maybe that way. Similarly, managers that make the best managers for groups of people often have worked that position themselves. So they work that position, then they move up, and now they're managers over the other people. And because of that, with that experience, they have better self-awareness for themselves and better awareness of what they can expect out of their employees. So experience is always the end-all be-all. When we get to the lecture question, I'll kind of joke about that a little bit more. Brian Shaw, what a monster, man. Now he's an arm wrestler. 40 years old, retired, arm wrestles now. It's pretty cool. Now, usually I do in the news at the beginning. We're only going to talk about this very briefly here because these aren't actually in the news as in happened recently. Just more things that I saw that I thought were interesting and pertain. So from Forbes, they did a survey of managers and employees. And the biggest part of this survey is they found that 72% of employees report that they are highly productive. It was actually for that quarter. So in that quarter, they were highly productive. 53% of their direct leaders agreed the same. So about half the leaders believed, yes, my employees were productive, whereas closer to 3/4 of the employees actually believed we were productive. To go another step further, 60 to 70% of employees believed that they shared the values of their organization, that they were close with their organization, right? Like I'm working hard, I'm close with my organization, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And about 30 to 40% of leaders actually believed the same. They believed their employees were disconnected. They were not part of the organization. Another Forbes study, speaking of self-awareness, found that lack of self-awareness, many high-achieving leaders, which usually we're using leaders and managers kind of interchangeably here, but your high-achieving managers actually lack self-awareness around their own burnout thresholds. So what we see a lot with management is people be really, really successful for not just months, but even years sometimes before kind of falling off the cliff, okay? Academia, which I talk good and bad about all the time. I'm an academic. I talk good about it, bad about it, I think I'm pretty fair. One thing academics have done really, really well is because you go through your PhD and it's a nightmare. Then you start your tenure clock immediately, which is like a double nightmare. It's what I'm on right now. In your tenure clock. Then when you get tenure, one of the things they give you is a sabbatical, which a sabbatical is basically a full semester paid off. And it's because burnout is very, very real. And a lot of researchers that are going to go on to get tenure at some university have been operating at a very high level for a long time. And they don't realize they're approaching that until they fall off the cliff. We see this with employees all the time, and managers that lack self-awareness have employees burn out faster because they're not aware that their employees are approaching this threshold. And then lastly, and this one's a little more creepy because I always like my creepy AI stuff. This was by Harvard Business Review. It was titled AI is Making the Workplace Empathy Crisis Worse. Despite technology's potential, AI is increasingly contributing to the empathy divide, highlighting how leaders can be out of sync with employees' emotional needs. This discussed multiple companies that they had wrote, a Harvard Business Review, the author of this, had wrote a paper over a year ago talking about leaders' separation with empathy with their employees, because what was happening is coming out of the COVID crisis, they were starting to bring people back to work. However, as people came back to work, managers weren't very empathetic to the fact that these people had been at home with their families, and it's kind of a hard transition to go from home to, working in the office. It's actually why my wife's at the company she's at now. She had worked from home during COVID for, 3 years. And then when she had to start going back, they had her go back on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, which is really quick to go from not coming back at all to 3 days a week. And then it was 5 days a week after like a month, right? And she was leaving, and she told my son that she was leaving and to go to work, and he broke down in tears. And my wife cried on the way home, or cried on the way to work, got to work. Nobody was very supportive of her, and then she quit, and that was it. And she came home and told me, I'll never work in an office again in person. Like, she just straight up said it. And I was like, all right, and she never has. She works virtually for not an IT company, a software company, and it's great now. Makes more money, it's great life. But the managers aren't very empathetic to people coming back. So they wrote a paper about that. how these managers are all bragging about getting people back to the office, but there wasn't empathy for the people coming back to the office. I'm not making an argument that bringing people back is bad or good, it's that the managers weren't empathetic to it. And then, so in the next year, what did managers do? They started outsourcing empathy and these tough conversations with employees to AI. That's like a common trend now, is to train a manager. So to me to sit down with you and to train you that when a manager or that when an employee comes to you with a problem and they email you, oh, my dad's sick and my kids are sick and it's hard for me to come in and I'm thinking about my dad being in the hospital all the time, is for you to write the response you think and then to put it into our AI chat so that it can empathetic it up for you, make it all empathy-like, make it all, oh, I'm so sorry about this and I really feel for you, and add all those words in there for you to make your message back to the employee to seem more empathetic. The belief being that employees will read this and it will feel more like a connection, but actually what they found in the Harvard Business Review is actually creating a larger divide, as employees can realize that these are all generic responses, and managers, when you're not practicing a skill, you're losing a skill. And so they're not being empathetic anymore. It would kind of be like if all of your emails you sent to me just got an AI response back, right? And I will say 70% of them probably could have an AI response and it'd be fine. Like, look at the syllabus, I'm going to grade this on Monday, whatever. But usually when students email me, it's because there's a problem, and sometimes it needs a more personal touch. So, besides experience, which these two kind of tie to experience, or these four, pardon me, the ways that we can build self-awareness outside of experience and outside of natural, some people are naturally have better self-awareness than others, is self-evaluation instruments, which are your assessments. The big five that we did, the reason we do it before this week is because that is a self-awareness tool. We do the big five. It helps you know a little bit about yourself. But again, not all assessments are perfect. We give out these assessments within organizations in the hiring process for lots of different reasons, but one of them is to understand yourself better. I can use my wife as an example. My wife is very good with her employees, and she believed for a long time that she was really empathetic. And she knows I tell this story, so I'm not being the bad husband here. She believed for a long time she was really, really empathetic, but I would listen to her talk to her employees, and I thought, I don't know if you're empathetic as much as you're really emotionally intelligent and you know how to make people feel better, but I don't think empathy is truly feeling what somebody else feels. And of course, through several different instruments that she could take, she was like, I think that's true. I don't think I'm actually, because she was reading these instruments that are like, do you feel sad when someone comes to you with their problems? And she's like, no, I'm just helping them feel better. Like, see, empathy is feeling their emotions, right? Then we have case studies. Case studies are one of the ways that we try to simulate experience in a classroom or even at organizations. Some organizations will give their employees case studies, things that have happened at other companies that they want to prevent from happening there. Case study, which you all know it is at this point, and today we actually do 3 case studies, is reading a scenario, seeing what would you have done, right? Today is probably the most fun case study for a lot of students. Not the most fun for me. I think my favorite's the negative one. Because the case study that you all do is these 3 mini case studies that are kind of controversial situations. And you read them, and then you decide what would you do. And the point is, there's no right or wrong answer, but the point is, what is your thought process? How do you think about problems and come up with solutions? Then we can give you individual problems that are often customized to highlight your personal strengths and weaknesses in an area. This is the whole question of, during a job interview when they're like, if you have someone come in and the employee has a problem with this, what are you going to do, right? This scenario comes up. What do you do? That's a pretty popular one. When I coached gymnastics for a long time, the one question they asked everybody when we came in was basically, kid gets hurt, the parent comes in pissed, or a kid doesn't score well at a meet, or like when I was coaching track, it's like their kid's not getting to run on the relay and the parent comes in angry, yelling at you. What do you do? And it's a specific problem to see what your response is and to try to create the scenario so you know what you would do and then what to do. And then you practice. This is the best, the best thing. Practice in a real world. We do our best to simulate that with things like the group project that we do in here, where you all work in teams, and hopefully gain a little self-awareness about the whole situation. People that are self-aware, I don't like to talk off slides, I'm just going to highlight a few things here. People that are self-aware are actually healthier. We have multiple studies that show that really self-aware individuals tend to even have things like lower blood pressure, stuff like that. It's pretty crazy. There's actually a whole field of management based around health, which is wild, like blood pressure, fitness, all that stuff, based around different traits. They tend to perform better in managerial and leadership roles, obviously, and they often are more productive at work. So self-awareness is good, but now we're going to talk about one of my favorite things in this lecture, which is the sensitivity line. You know how there's like buzzwords that get thrown around? Like, I think a popular one right now is quiet quitting. Like that word became popular. Yeah, one of my friend who's at Bowling Green just published a paper on quiet quitting because it was such a buzzword. He was like, as soon as it got popular, he goes, I'm going to write a paper about it, explaining it, because all the big journals will want it because it's the big buzzword. And I've read the paper. It's fine, but the reason it's successful is because the buzzword's great, and he's a great writer. The sensitivity line is one that always shocked me that never made like headlines, or we don't hear repeated in the news a lot. But as a sensitivity line is something that theoretically has been tested 1,000 times, that seems to exist in psychology and OB, which is what we're doing here. It's the point at which individuals become defensive when they encounter information about themselves that is inconsistent with their self-concept. Now I'll make that make more sense. You have a perception about yourself, and then you're given information that tells you otherwise. And all of a sudden, are you defensive about this? What is your response? Does it cross your sensitivity line? I play chess. I love playing chess. One of the worst things you can do as a chess player, if you really get into it, is only play friends and family or local clubs. I've played chess for many years. I thought I was pretty good at it. I would play on my friends and family and do well. And one day I walked into a coffee shop and there was an old man sitting there messing with the chessboard, putting it all together. And I was like, do you play? And he's like, I do. Do you want to play? And I said, yes. And he said his name was Chuck. And I started playing him, and he was an international grandmaster, and I didn't know that, and he smoked me. Blew me out of the water. He used to be the highest rated chess player in Oklahoma. Now he's almost 70. He's the second highest rated chess player in Oklahoma, and just blew me out of the water. And for about 3 days, I was like, I'm the worst person at chess that's ever played. I am garbage at this. I don't deserve to play. That's exactly how I felt, because he crossed my sensitivity line and shocked my confidence about what I thought I knew about myself. So, you have a sensitivity line. Very self-aware individuals that understand themselves and are actually understand themselves. Self-awareness is truths about yourself. It's not inflated beliefs about yourself that aren't true. It is having awareness of how you are perceived, about your skills and capabilities, and you know them. People that have high self-awareness tend to have you could call it a further sensitivity line, like it's harder to cross, because the things they know about themselves are truth and they're confident in them. And if something's ever presented to them that's contrary to what they believe, it doesn't threaten their identity. Okay? And because of that, really self-aware people are actually more accepting of criticism, and they're more likely to change their opinions if presented good information. Okay? If you're low in self-awareness, your sensitivity line's closer, and when you cross the sensitivity line, you get what's called threat rigidity, response, which means you freeze up. You will not change. The reason I'm shocked we don't hear about this more is because we're not going to talk a lot about politics, but think about politics. People on this side of the political aisle, people on this side of the political aisle. People over here believe X, Y, and Z. And that is self-aware. X, Y, and Z is the truth. And people over here, A, B, and C. This is the truth. And the candidate over here does something good or does something bad. Does it ever change anybody over here's opinions? Or vice versa? No, because their sensitivity lines are low. Because a lot of people actually don't understand politics. The majority of people's political opinions are based on their parents and the region that they live in, right? So it's not like profound. I'm not saying people can't. I'm just saying it's rare. So the reason we don't see a shift and the reason like political debate doesn't really change anything is because everybody's sensitivity lines, at least in this area, are close to them. And when you're presented with information completely contrary to what you believe, you get rigid. You don't change because you're actually unsure. You ground yourself in. It's the manager that you have that sits there and manages everybody and thinks they have the best way to do it. And when another employee comes up and says, hey, I think we should do it this way, it seems better, they get struck down because it's like, you will not challenge my authority. I'm in this position of power. It would be like if I'm here and I said something about straw 1981 and somebody in the chat goes, it's actually 71. And I was like, shut up. I went to school for 13 years. You don't know, blah, blah, blah. Right. That would be bad. That's a close sensitivity line. There's not really good phrasing for close or far. But being very self-aware pushes your sensitivity line down farther, and that's great. People that have high self-awareness, their sensitivity lines further, they take criticism better, they're more likely to change their opinions on things and beliefs based on new information. And kind of interesting, people that have a far sensitivity line take more risks, which means they tend to be better entrepreneurs and such. I think I put on the previous slide, you can check me, that people with a low sensitivity line or a close sensitivity line rather, they get really risk adverse, and it's for the fear of getting information that's contrary to what you believe about yourself. Like, that's really scary. Like, if you think you're a good public speaker or you're good at a sport or you're good at something, but you don't do it for fear of failure and then being your world getting shook and you're like, oh, I don't know who I am anymore, right? So that's why, more experience, better self-awareness, you tend to be more willing to do those things. So the other reason, oh, this is a fun conundrum. Oh, this is a fun conversation to have with academics. Oh, it's so fun for me, not for you. You guys think it's boring, maybe. Is having high self-awareness helps us value differences in others and see differences in others. Now, there's a conundrum we face, but I want to talk about this before I get into too much. We tell you all, and academics tell you all, and you've seen it plastered all over the news and in every journal and Harvard Business Review, that we want diverse workplaces and difference of ideas and people to come in, with different background experiences, different socioeconomic backgrounds, so we can create a diverse work environment where we're collaborating with all these new ideas. Yeah. There's also research that says the people that get along and have the highest production are the most similar. The people that that are the most similar to you, right? When you go to a place, the people you're attracted to and hang out with are the people that have similar ideas as you, views as you, often the same backgrounds as you. And then ultimately, we're all adults, people that look more similar to yourself, right? So skin color, same sex, even like hair, stuff like that. So this is the conundrum we face, because we have all this research that's like, we should be diverse, we should have difference of ideas, we should have a diverse workplace and be very inclusive, and then also people get along better with people that are similar to themselves. Now, the truth is somewhere in the middle, which is the truth is, as an organization, you want diversity. It brings in different ideas. People that have different backgrounds think about things differently, which can help you find different solutions to multiple problems, right? And it's important that, we're diverse organizations, but also you want people of similar values. That seems to be the catch-22 right there. Is organizations operate the best when they're very diverse and we have people with different backgrounds with similar goals and values in life, right? You don't want an organization with people of lots of different backgrounds, but everybody there is to make a lot of money. We're on Wall Street, and then this person's big driving factor is family and spending time with their kids. It's a very different value. I wouldn't work well in that. The reason I chose NSU is because my kids, my wife are the most important to me. You guys are definitely number two, so don't be too hard on yourself. But a lot of universities, it's research. It's like you have to publish A-star research. It's not about teaching. It's only top-tier research, and you don't have to think. So that's important. So that's the conundrum we face. But having good self-awareness helps us recognize and appreciate differences in individuals. Low self-awareness individuals, it kind of goes back to that sensitivity line. It's the belief if you have low self-awareness, you tend to think very highly of yourself for the wrong reasons. And because of that, you believe that it's your way or the highway, like you're the best. And so anybody that's different than you must be wrong. They must be doing something bad. You drinking coffee right now?
Yeah.
Dude, straight up. And you're like taking it down. You make your own coffee?
Yeah, it's cheap.
It is way cheaper.
It's like 30 cents for
Isn't that crazy? Just black coffee? Who are you trying to impress?
no.
Black coffee?
I'm a broke college student. Gotta
No creamer?
no.
I'll buy you creamer.
I like it. More.
If you get good black coffee, it doesn't matter.
The hell are you guys? What is this? Black coffee?
I don't know.
Yeah,
When I was in the army, they taught us to love black coffee, so I started
that's
loving
good.
it.
I'm just giving you hell. If I could drink black coffee straight, I would. It's so much healthier for you. But man,
If you get Starbucks black coffee, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's meant
But like
to be
if you
burnt.
get
it tastes burnt.
but if you get good black coffee, like Black Rifle's pretty good, or like actual like high quality coffee, it's like not bad.
Yeah, you know they actually burn their coffee on purpose
I've heard that.
because they want you to buy the more expensive drinks, and they can guarantee that's going to be like a shitty burnt coffee every single time. So you're like, oh, I'll just spend a couple like an extra $1 or $2, get the mocha.
I like my creamer, but I only drink decaf now because I get
I'm so
the.
sorry for your loss.
Well, I don't need any more energy, to be honest. wait, hold on. Before we move on, what coffee are you drinking?
Original coffee flavor from Winco. It's $10 for like a pound or 2 of it.
I drink Pete's coffee. I like it. All right, these are the 5 areas of self-awareness. I'm not a big fan of this diagram because it looks like a pentagram straight up,
Yeah.
but not quite. It's missing a line. And I think they didn't put a line there because I was thinking theoretically the other day if there's a tie between emotional intelligence and values. And I don't think there is theoretically, but if there was, they would have to change this graph. Emotional intelligence is over here, values are over here. So create a line. But these are the 5 areas of awareness. I will say the biggest ones up here, actually the biggest one is emotional intelligence, hands down. Nobody will argue with me on that. Every professor in the world will tell you emotional intelligence is number 1. And core self-evaluations we use all the time. You guys in this class actually will do your assessment this week is on core self-evaluation, cognitive styles, and attitudes towards change. We don't do an EI one. EI test can be complicated. So we'll start with an ESE or a CSE, core self-evaluation. We use it in research a lot because it's such a good predictor. Core self-evaluation, and before I go on, these 5 areas of self-awareness bleed into each other a lot. So you're going to see some terms like locus of control used multiple times. Core self-evaluation consists of 4 things. Self-esteem, generalized self-efficacy, neuroticism, and locus of control. So these 5 areas we're talking about are areas that make up our personal awareness of ourselves. What is our self-awareness? Core self-evaluation is one of them, and it breaks up into these 4 things. Self-esteem is how highly do you regard yourself? You all know what self-esteem is, so I'm not going to say any more on it. Generalized self-efficacy is a little bit more complicated. Self-efficacy is your ability to do things. Self-esteem is your belief that you can do things or belief in yourself. Self-efficacy is your ability to do stuff. Now, generalized is very important because we all are good at different things. So you can have really high self-efficacy in chess or really high self-efficacy in accounting, but be really, really terrible over here in writing or the arts or whatever. Generalized self-efficacy is your general ability as a person to pick up tasks and be good at them. IQ is actually a pretty good indicator of your general self-efficacy. People with high IQ are not necessarily just smarter out of the gate, but they generally understand things faster than other people. But IQ gets complicated. We can get into IQ if anybody ever wants to have a long IQ talk. It's such a controversial one. Neuroticism is your, which we've already discussed in this class. I won't go into it. Your propensity for negative emotions such as anger, depression, sadness, frustration, anxiety. And then locus of control, which is the belief that things are in your control or the belief that there is something else controlling your life. And we'll get into locus of control more. Now, core self-evaluation actually pretty accurately predicts these things. Personality uniqueness, so how different your personality is from the standard or from other individuals. Your level of job satisfaction, your level of performance, or life satisfaction, which is our fun scientific way of saying happiness. So job satisfaction and life satisfaction are different. Job satisfaction, your happiness with the job you have, which can be separate from your job performance. However, satisfaction and performance tend to be related, and life satisfaction tends to be related to all of these. If you are high in life satisfaction, you tend to perform better in your job and be happy with your job. If either of these things are low, they tend to hurt your life satisfaction. Because unfortunately, our jobs are very tied to our lives.
What?
Which ones affect your life satisfaction? Job.
Job satisfaction and job performance. Personality uniqueness is kind of its own thing, because that's a catch-all for you're different. Now, internal locus of control. We're going to go back to the control thing. Locus of control. This one's so cool as Americans, because we are weird. What's the number one religion in America?
Christianity.
Okay. Are the majority of Americans Christian?
No.
Actually, yes, I believe we are. I think that more than 50% of Americans say that they're Christian, right? This is what's really unique. Internal locus of control is the belief that you have control over your lives. The outcomes are in your control. So success on the test, success at a job, whatever is under your control. External locus of control is the belief that there are factors outside of your control that determine your success. In the United States, what we see is that successful people tend to be high in internal locus of control. So when you're high in internal locus of control and you believe you have control, boom. In other countries, this is the same, except for other countries that tend to be very religious or spiritual, because for them, high external locus of control is actually generally better. They tend to be more successful because they're very spiritual and they believe having things be outside of my control is almost comforting, if that makes sense. Something else is controlling it to make sure I'm successful. We're kind of interesting here in America. We have a lot of Christians, and Christianity could be the belief that there is there's something else that you control your outcomes, so maybe it's not all in your control. However, we still are really high in internal locus of control, which is we're just kind of a country that kind of is different. Like we're high in religion, or we have a lot of religion in our country, but also high in internal locus of control. But I'm Christian myself. There could be a belief that maybe Christianity has a belief that you are in control. That makes sense. I think that might be it.
Yeah.
Not to put my religion into this, just saying that might be it, that there's the belief that you have control over your life. So, this isn't a religious class though, bless you. So, high internal locus of control is related to managerial success, at least in the United States, or North America in general. Less alienation from your work environment, more satisfaction at work, less stress, which is interesting. The belief that things are in your control actually lead to less stress. Even though we always tell people, if things are out of your control, don't worry about them. It turns out most people feel better if they can control everything. And more position mobility, because you believe you can get different positions. Now, this is the catch-22. We're not 100%. Is it that people that are high in internal locus of control are more successful because they believe it's all under control, so they'll do it, right? Like, if I work hard, I'll get that job. If I want that promotion, I can get it. I'm not going to stress because I can fix this. Or is it that people that are successful develop internal locus of control because we want our success to be our own doing? Nobody wants to be like, I got the job and it was just dumb luck. So we actually don't know if it's the chicken or the egg. I'm sure there's some research out there that tries to say one or the other. If people that become successful are like, yeah, it's all under my control, or if people that think it's all under their control become successful. So who knows? But we do know that high internal locus of control is related to these things. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't like to put my opinion if one comes first before the other.
Or both are true.
Or both are true. Yeah. There is the truth that when people believe things are out of their control, they will not work for them. So there's people, human beings will not pound their head against the wall. We're oddly rational in that form, where if we think that something isn't under control, we won't do it. We'll stop. So there's the other way around. So that was core self-evaluation. The other ones won't take as long, except maybe emotional intelligence. Let's go to attitudes towards change. If you all did the big 5, you can compare your openness to experiences with whatever you score on attitudes towards change, and they should be fairly related. Like they should correlate roughly the same. attitudes towards change, we have tolerance of ambiguity. There's a star by it because you guys are going to do it. The extent to which individuals are comfortable coping with unclear situations. People that are high in tolerance of ambiguity are okay when they're uncertain, right? They're okay with like the chaos or different situations. People that are low in tolerance of ambiguity need things to be standardized and the same. I'm very, very low in tolerance of ambiguity. When we go on vacation, I want to know when my flights are. I want to be early, and it stresses me out when we don't have a plan for every single day that we're gone. I hate it. I hate it. I book my Ubers like a week in advance, man. Like I am on time. I hate not knowing what's going to happen. My wife is very different, very, very comfortable, just going low. This weekend, we had my son's soccer game, and then we were supposed to drive to Stillwater because my mom was going to watch my kids while me and my wife went on a date, right? And the soccer game got pushed back later, and I was like, are we going to leave for Stillwater at 7 o'clock at night? And my wife's like, I don't know, we'll figure it out after the game. And I was like, no, woman, we need to figure it out now, or I cannot get in that car. I will lose my mind. But not my wife. She was chill about it. She's like, I'll just throw my overnight bag in the car, and we'll just leave from the soccer game, or we'll come home. And my brain can't comprehend a 10-minute drive home or an hour-and-a-half drive to Stillwater, and we'll just find out later. Sorry, ranting, marriage counseling. I'm just kidding. But I have low tolerance of ambiguity. You all will see about yourselves. Now, locus of control, we've already discussed, but I put these in here. I jumped ahead of the gun and I talked about them a bunch. But internal locus of control is actually also tied to your attitudes towards change. People that are high in internal locus of control tend to have better tolerance of ambiguity because they feel like they can control the situation. If the situation is ambiguous, it's because I let it be ambiguous. Now, emotional intelligence. EI. When EI was first discovered, it was called the golden elixir. Oh my gosh, I've already gone for 45 minutes. Hold on, team. I told you guys about that study. We have emotional intelligence, and then we go to cognitive styles and values, and then we're done. But then we're going to go to the case study. So before we go on to emotional intelligence, we are going to take like 5 to 7 minutes to chill. I never like to lecture for more than 45 minutes at a time because it's bad for the psyche. Not for me, for everybody else. So it is 6:18, almost 6:19. We will come back at 6:25. I'll kick the recorder on. We'll finish the lecture in like 10 minutes, and then we'll do the case study and talk about the assessment, and then you guys can go home and watch the Bears lose to the Vikings. So we'll be back in 6 minutes.
I was actually going to ask you if I
Resume my recording here. I think the back half of this is going to be much faster. I wouldn't even say back half. This is like the back fourth. So emotional intelligence is our golden elixir. It is one of the best ways to predict success. It predicts job performance in many different ways, but essentially it is your ability to diagnose and recognize your own emotions, your ability to control your emotions, the ability to recognize and diagnose the emotions in others, and the ability to respond appropriately to emotional cues. Now, here's a really controversial statement that people don't like. Maybe one of the more controversial things I say. You probably won't think so, honestly. If you think of famous, successful person, I don't care who it is, if they have been successful for a long time, even doing things outrageous, where they do stuff that you're like, this is crazy, right? Jerry Jones for the Cowboys, that's a safe one. They probably are actually really high in emotional intelligence. Most of the studies show that people like Jerry Jones, who make all these crazy decisions, and it seems like he's driving the Cowboys to hell, is also making a ridiculous amount of money. And the odds are they're aware of what they're doing. That's just what the data shows. Of course, there's people out there that make a ton of money or become famous just completely being dumb and it's successful for them and whatever. But emotional intelligence tends to be high in successful people, and it's one of the it's almost always consistent. So you're really successful CEOs, if you go out there and you look like a Zuckerberg or a Bezos, most likely they're high in emotional intelligence. It's one of the most consistent factors. Whereas things like being extroverted tend to be associated with successful CEOs, but we can name a ton of CEOs that aren't extroverted, right? But emotional intelligence is actually a pretty consistent one because being emotionally intelligent is really founded in self-awareness because you really understand why you feel the way you feel, but also you understand why other people feel the way they feel. I had a student challenge me one time, not really challenge me, but they had a question about Machiavellianism and emotional intelligence. I don't know if you all remember, I said it briefly, I think 2 weeks ago. Machiavellianism is people that manipulate others, right? They can manipulate others to benefit of themselves, basically. And they were like, are people that are good Machiavellianists, have really high Machiavellianism, are they also really emotionally intelligent? And I was like, maybe. And I had to look into it. And sure enough, there's a paper called The Dark Side of Emotional Intelligence. And it shows that people that are really high in Machiavellianism and have been successful at it are also super high in emotional intelligence. So they're good at understanding people, which is why they can manipulate them. So emotional intelligence isn't always like, oh, people that are high in emotional intelligence are good people. It just means people that are high in emotional intelligence understand themselves and they understand others well. I go back and forth on if I have high emotional intelligence. I think I have a good understanding of my own emotions, but then I think I misread people all the time. So I don't know. But it's an extremely strong predictor of success. It is moderately associated with better social relationships, well-being and satisfaction, job satisfaction, better emotional control, conscientiousness and self-efficacy, organizational citizenship behaviors. We call it OCBs. You'll hear me say that term from time to time. An OCB is just doing something for the organization that is above and beyond your job description. And self-rated performance, which is kind of funny. If you're high in emotional intelligence, you're like, I did great. So you probably are doing great. So emotional intelligence is like the end-all be-all. I've talked about several studies with you all, such as, did I talk to you guys about Feeding the Fire, where people get angry and like how to reduce your anger? Did I talk about that? No? Okay, great. It's a great emotional intelligence study. It'll be I'll study quickly. There was a study called Feeding the Flame or Feeding the Fire, one of the two. And what it did was there's this belief that venting is the way to get rid of negative emotions. Something bad happens to you, vent it out. Like, we used to tell young men through physical exertion, right? Like, get outside, run, punch things, hit stuff like that. So in the study, they brought people in and they pissed them off. I can't remember how they did it. We used to be able to do way cooler things before I became a scientist. Before I became a scientist, we were shocking people. We were telling people their parents died, but they didn't actually. All sorts of crazy stuff. You could do crazy stuff in the name of science. Now we have an IRB, and there's none of that stuff anymore. Look up the Stanford Prison Experiment if you want to know what I'm talking about.
Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there. But they brought people in, they pissed them off somehow. Then what they did is they took half the angry people and they said, you go punch that punching bag and exert a bunch of energy. Hit it, get angry, rawr. And you come over here and I want you to journal and talk about why you feel the way you feel. That is an emotional intelligence and a conscientiousness exercise. It is looking internal to understand your emotions, right? They had them come over there, journal. These people go over there and punch. And what they found is that if I measured your anger on a scale of 1 to 10 after I made you angry, you were a 7 out of 10. The people that went and punched the punching bag immediately after were an 8 out of 10. And the emotional intelligence people that went and journaled were a 4 out of 10, right? Came way down. That is because emotional intelligence, understanding the way you feel, decreases your neuroticism, increases your emotional stability. I am not saying that venting is a bad thing. Getting it out is good, but through physical violence and stuff like that was basically proven not to be the way to do it. Like, you shouldn't tell an angry man to go hit a bunch of stuff and they won't be angry anymore. It turns out it just like perpetuates anger emotions. So it was basically a test in emotional stability, which is the extent to which you can feel secure and unworried, to which your emotions stay relatively stable. Low levels, prone to anxiety, tend to view the world negatively. High levels, better job performance, better in stressful situations, all that fun stuff. So as a manager, you always want to be high in emotional intelligence. You always want to be high in emotional stability. there used to be a belief that emotional intelligence was very untrainable. It seems now it's very trainable. You can definitely increase your emotional stability and your emotional intelligence. Now, cognitive styles. You all will actually test on cognitive styles, so have fun. That's why it's got the star up there. I'm not going to spend too long on these. I'm actually not a huge fan of the cognitive styles. That's just my opinion, but I teach about it because it is important. This is basically knowing the way in which you gather information, the way in which you evaluate that information. So this is kind of understanding yourself, understanding your ability to gather information and use it to problem solve. Critical thinking is one of the number one things that organizations say college students should develop more. So that kind of comes down to cognitive styles. I wish that thing was just a little bit higher. I get blinded every time I walk across, but I also can't stand here. How many of you guys, do you have any other classes with professors in person? Yeah, do they stand in the same spot? Do they
They
move?
will sit.
They sit?
Yeah.
That's not possible.
Well, one of them's in a wheelchair, so, and the
Okay.
other one has a service dog.
You kind of baited me on that one. To be honest.
Sorry.
I have one professor during his classes. He's in person, but
But
he's sitting the entire time.
I don't think I could do that.
Like it's like an hour and a half class. He's just sitting there.
Just talk.
Oh, he talks, but just doing Excel the entire time.
Oh, he's working on Excel. That's a little different. I could have
had
a
a-
fun career build so I could walk around and talk.
I had a history professor at TCC that I'm not kidding you sat there and lectured the entire class. He had 3 assignments the entire semester: midterm, final, and paper. And that was his entire class. He didn't let you. None of the notes that you took in class affected the midterm or anything. He just talked for an hour and a half,
Man,
and that was it. Every
you know, I
class.
had a class like that too. But from like a teaching standpoint, I don't think I could stand up here. I would lose my mind.
One could even teach. He just played movies from the History Channel.
Oh, that sounds dope. I should have been a history professor. Dimensions of cognitive style. So these are the 3. When you take the test, you're going to fall into one of these 3 categories. The first 2 are way more similar than the last one. The last one's like off on its own. Knowing, planning, and creating. I'm not going to go into super detail on these. Knowing. These are the people. They care about detailed facts, all the little minute details. They want a lot of data. They want to be able to see clear, tangible solutions. I am usually kind of somewhere in knowing and planning. Planning emphasizes planning and preparation. They want agendas, outlines. These 2 are quite similar, I would say. However, planning really focuses on this idea of they're not very good with ambiguity. They want everything planned out for them. Knowing doesn't necessarily dislike ambiguity. They just want as much data as possible, right? They want all this information. But both of these are generally considered not very creative, especially knowing. And then you have creating, which tends to be very high in ambiguity. And these are people that like to think creatively. They don't need all the hard data or definitive answers to things. They tend to take more risk, be more innovative. Anybody that's really, really high in innovation, if you think of like a Steve Jobs, they were probably more of a creating in that it doesn't mean that they don't operate with facts and details or they don't plan out. It's that they're not making all of their decisions through this hard data. They can think more outside the box. I don't know if anybody's a fan of Jimmy Donaldson. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. Mr. Beast is his name, right? One thing that he has been really successful at, I like to listen to him as an entrepreneur because for some reason in academia, we haven't done a lot of studies on him. And whether you dislike him or like him, he definitely has made a lot of money in an unconventional way, the way he runs his companies and everything. So there's something unique there. But if you ever listen to him talk, he is very much a like Willy Wonka fantasy mind in that a lot of his decisions are not super data driven, but more he sees an outcome and just believes you can always get there. And he will operate very creative and weird to get it done. So that's what he's done. He does this cool speech where he talks about trying to get, they needed cranes for one of his sets and nobody wanted to give him a crane to like lift people off the ground. So they like called multiple crane companies. Then he would call a company and be like, why can't I do it? And they'd be like, oh, because of human, safety. And he's like, are there people you would lift? And like, yeah, we'll lift up like set pieces for like movies that have like certified workers on them or whatever. And he's like, okay, I'm going to certify these people so that they can stand on a moving crane. Like he would just like find weird solutions to get a crane company to let him use cranes to lift people in the air, stuff like that. So he's very creating mindset, I would say. We're almost done here. We're going to jump to the case study. The case study's fun. So values. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on values this week. I'm going to spend a few minutes right now. We do an ethics section at the very end of the class, at the end of the semester, not this class. And in ethics, we'll talk a lot about values. A lot of your self-awareness will come down to what are your foundational attributes, personal preferences, what do you believe is important to you? When we talk about planning and we'll talk about timing, you were talking about this is a lot of this is psychology. The section where we talk about time management is we get way away from psychology in that, so it kind of bounces back and forth. But in that, we talk about values. So what is important to you? Your values should ultimately drive a lot of your decisions, what kind of organizations you work for. Have any of you ever heard of cognitive dissonance? Yeah, do you know what cognitive dissonance is?
It's where you are disassociated with your reality. You're not all there. You're like,
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
like a third person.
The cognitive dissonance we're referring to is, okay. What you said is correct in a psychology term. When we use it in business, we say cognitive dissonance is when employees have to operate in a way that is contrary to their values. So basically, this is my belief, but my reality is separate from my belief, which is the dissonance, right? So yeah.
It's like a vegan working at a meat.
That's exactly what it's like. A vegan working at a meat shop. The best example I have is my cousin married a brilliant man who was in finance, who has strong values, but didn't have high self-awareness at the time. Obviously does now. He was like 22, 23, and figured it out. And this is why self-awareness is important, not only for him, but for the managers hiring him, because they should have recognized this. Brilliant at finance. Came out of Kansas State. When he was hired for several $100,000 a year to an insurance company, he is a Catholic man who always wanted to have a bunch of kids, was very, very family and church first, just do anything for you, right? He worked for an insurance company, and his job was to work with a team of people to make sure that claims were not paid out. That's the job. The job was to save money for the insurance company, right? Because insurance companies have to make money. So their job was, as this finance genius, I need you to work this with this team of people in whatever way you can to make sure that we don't have to pay the claim out to save money for us, right? So that was his job. It's not against the law necessarily. I'm sure they didn't present it in that way. I'm sure it was more of a save the company money kind of way. But he worked for them for about a year or two and hated it. He will tell you it's the most miserable experience of his life, but other people didn't have a problem with it. Because for him, it was true cognitive dissonance. It was his values were X, and this company needed him to operate in Y. If I went and worked for, I had a job offer from a larger institute, like a university, and I'm not going to say who, but they're up north, and they would want me to come in and do A-star research. Now, I do counterproductive work behavior research, which a lot of universities blunt because you study things like sexual harassment and diversity, and that's a really hot topic, right? So they would want me to come in and not teach very much and publish 4 papers a year, and that would take a lot of my focus, and my family would be way less of a focus. And that would be great, and I know tons of people that would love to do that. But it is completely separate from my values. And so after interviewing with them, and everything, when I came to NSU during the interview, I was really, really upfront about I have 2 kids. Me and my wife want to have another kid. It is very important to me that I put my kids to bed, except on Mondays, that I put my kids to bed, that I get to go to all my kids' sporting events, and that I get to research what I want. And they were like, great, we love that. Yay. And that fits the culture here. All the professors here, a lot of them have families. That's what they care about. So my values align with this organization. I don't go through cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is pretty much the death. It's the death of your employees. If you get an employee that experiences cognitive dissonance, they will performance plummets. They will leave your organization almost every single time. It is always bad. You do not want anybody working for your company that doesn't believe in what you're doing. That's the death. It's over. If somebody works for your company and they disagree with what your company's doing, it's not good. My cousin that left that place, he started his own finance firm. Now he has clients that he works for, and his job is to help them do things like plan for retirement, and he loves it because for them, he's helping them manage their finance in a way that the better he does his job, the better their lives are, and it's all non-sketchy, right? And it makes him feel great to help people plan to retire. And he makes great money now, probably more than he used to. It's his own company. We're gonna call it there. We're not talking about that. As a professor, you got to know when to be done. That was the time. All right, we're about to go to a case study. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, but I will reshare in a minute. Now, you got to have your books. However, there's a benefit for you all. There are copyright laws in this world, so you all can own the book and all that stuff, and I cannot send you the case studies or assessments out of the book. I can't like send you the slides. There's actually a rule that I can send some, like a %. So I can't post these slides on Blackboard, okay? And I can't like send you the PDFs or anything like that. But we are gonna, I do have slides with them because it helps me teach with them. I just can't post them online. But you do need your textbook for the assessment and case studies. But for today, I actually have the case study from the textbook on these slides. I just can't share the slide deck with you. Does that make sense? Copyright things? I can't send you pictures. Yeah, that's basically it. I actually did in the past, and no one told me not to. And then someone was like, be careful what pictures you show from the textbook and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, sorry. So, a lot of the case studies I write myself, so you don't have to worry about it anyway. Let's go pick here. So in this case study, I should pull up the template really quick. This is case study 1. If you go to our right here, self-awareness. Under self-awareness, we have assignments. This is just the reading. You don't have to do anything with the reading. It just tells you what chapter we're covering. Lecture question 3, which I'll give you at the end of class. Homework 1. And then the assessment 2, which I'll talk about in case study 1. In here, there is a template. You're going to want that template for sure. This is our template. This is how it works. For this case study, there are 3 different scenarios: the escaped prisoner, the doctor's dilemma, and the newspaper. Now listen closely, because people mess this up. That's why I think it's important to be in class or watch the lecture video closely, because people will mess this up. You read this scenario. The first one's pretty simple. You see a guy that escaped from prison. Do you report them or not? And this person's been living an outstanding life. Blah. You decide if you report them, you can't decide, or not report them. Then you go down and you look at all of these are questions here, and you rate them. I think it's 1 out of 5. That's what it is. I was making sure. You rate them on a scale of 1 out of 5 about how important each question is in your decision. So question number 1 is, hasn't Mr. Thompson, who's the person that was the prisoner, been good enough for such a long time to prove he isn't a bad person? Now, maybe to you, it doesn't matter if they've been a good person. They committed a crime, they escaped jail, they have to go back to prison. That means this would be a 1 out of 5. It's not important at all to you. Maybe you think that being good can override whatever you did in the past, and you don't need to finish serving out your prison sentence, then that would be a 5. And then we go to number 2. Every time someone escapes punishment for a crime, doesn't that just encourage more crime? Maybe that's important to you, so that's a 5. Maybe you're like, no, it doesn't encourage more crime. That's a 1. So you rate these all on a scale of 1 to 5 all the way down. Then over here, you tell me what was the most important question here in your decision. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So at the end, we're going to have a decision you made, how important each of these questions were, and then what questions were most important for 1 to 4. You do that for all 3 scenarios. The scenarios are very short. They're just these paragraphs, right? This middle one's kind of dark. It's about assisted suicide. But, college level class. You will answer all of that in here, so just put an X on which one. 1 through 5 on these questions, and then most important to 4th important. If you are in my MBA section and you are listening to this, There is an extra question at the very end that the undergrads do not have. Make sure you see it. It's kind of a big question, but it's very important. So make sure you answer all the parts. Does that make sense to you all?
Yeah.
Generally, pretty simple.
So wait, so next to number one, like let's say the first question is like super important to me.
5.
I would put a 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it wasn't important, you put a 1.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. I won't go into like super detail to see, to like make sure that you're not just putting random numbers. But sometimes it's obvious people are putting random numbers because their answer won't make any sense with the questions they think aren't. And I'm a nerd, so I like to read people's answers. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pause the recorder. I'm not going to give everybody a ton of time to do this because you can do this on your own too. But I want to take like 5-10 minutes to let people look at these because then I want to discuss them a little bit out loud. But I don't want to give my opinions on this or talk through them until everybody's had a chance. So I will put the slides up here. I will stop talking. I will pause the recorder. Oh, let me pause the recorder first. So now that the recorder's back on, I didn't show the whole discussion because you can't see the poll when I record it. We just kind of talk about it a little bit. But make sure that you, first of all, get your textbooks. You're going to need it for the assessment. Second of all, make sure you fill this out, get your X there, put your answers in. Most important, 1 to 5, all the way down. And then the most important questions, 1 through 4. Do that for all of these. For my MBA students, make sure you do the extra question at the end. Now, let's wrap up here by going to this. We're going to talk about the assessment so briefly and then do the lecture question. Assessment 2. Assessment 2 is technically 3 assessments, but they are very quick. If you have the 10th edition of the textbook, they will be on page 41 through 42, 42 through 43, and 43 through 44. That is where it gives you the questions. If you're okay writing in your textbook, then you can do that, I guess. But I created a template because this is the easiest way to turn it in. So write your answers down. Some people use a different piece of paper because they want to sell their textbook at the end. That's fine. You write your answers to each of these. If I was you, I would fill out all 3 assessments first. Whoa. I cannot express how much I didn't want that to happen. I suggest filling out all 3 assessments. They're really simple. The filling them out is the really simple part. Then you go to these pages to score them. Okay? You just give me your score here. Some people mess up the scoring a little bit. Make sure you read the scoring closely because I can glance at your scores and tell you if they're right or wrong. I will tell you the one people mess up on, I think is core self-evaluation. No, I think it's cognitive style. But what it looks like, this is what people mess up on. It will say questions, like to calculate your score, take questions. And people will think that what it's saying is take question 1 and subtract question 5. So like if your answer to question 1 is 10 and your answer to question 5 is 4, they'll give me 6 as the answer. It is saying add all those up. It is poorly written instructions. Even though 90% of students get it right, it's because they have to infer what it's trying to ask. 10% of students will mess that up. They'll subtract them. And when I read it, it's poorly written. The authors wrote it poorly. It's the assessment's written bad. If I had done this in my PhD, I would have got flamed for how I wrote that question because you can't write it that way. You have to be super specific. What they would want you to do if you're in your PhD, they would say add questions 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 together. And then they would give an example. For example, question 1 is this, question 2 is this. You got this, right? Like that's what they would do. But don't mess up if you're unsure if you did it right, just let me know. And I can help you out. But in your textbook, go to those pages, fill this out, and turn it in. Always use my templates. I do templates for you all to make it easy. So take assessment 2 template, fill it out, case study 1 template. Now for your lecture question. I like this lecture question. I'll give you your lecture question and you can go. We were talking about self-awareness. So if you've been zoned out on Zoom, listen up now. Everybody recording that I've been recording this for, listen up. This is the lecture question. Don't get confused. we talked about self-awareness and the gorilla question, right? I like to develop self-awareness and critical thinking abilities in my kids. So I have created several questions for them that help them think creatively and in weird ways. One of my favorite ones that my kids love, that I ask them every year and their answers change, is if I gave you $1,000 for every orange you ate, but here's the thing, you get 24 hours to eat the oranges, and you have to tell me ahead of time how many oranges you're going to eat. So if you say, I can eat 10 oranges in 24 hours, and I'm like, great, that's $10,000. But you have to eat 10 oranges. You don't get any more money if you eat more. And if you eat less, you fail. If you throw up, or anything like that, like puke, throw up, you lose. You lose it all. You don't commonly ask questions. You don't have to eat the skin of the orange, so like the outside, the peel. And it doesn't matter how you eat it as long as it goes through your mouth. So you can blend it up if you want. How many oranges would you bet that you can eat in 24 hours? That's the question. I just need to know how many oranges you would bet. The best answer now go ahead and answer that. The best answer I probably ever received, I had a student say 14. And I said, why 14? He said, I owe $13,770 in student loans. I'm confident I can eat 14 oranges, and that'll leave enough to let me take my girlfriend out afterwards. I said, great answer. So that was his answer. The worst answer I ever got was 400 from one student. And I did the math. It was like 40,000 calories or something stupid. Like it wasn't that high, but it was
Like it has to be a full.
it's a full orange,
Or like
not a cutie. Those are
oh,
tangerines.
Oh, like I don't know what doing it.
Lemon thyme or whatever they are.
That's
You
what
get
you
that
took my
into the
answer.
juice mixer and make
You can mix it up.
that.
Now, what I like to do with my kids, yes, ma'am,
How long?
24 hours to eat them all. Eat as many as you can. You get 24 hours. I don't care how you space it out. You have 24 hours to eat them. One of my favorite things to do with my kids
Wait,
is what?
you can juice it, or
Yeah,
you
you
can
can juice
blend
it.
Oh, I mean it.
Well, you can blend. You have to eat everything on the inside
Because
of the skin.
yeah,
Everything on the inside of the peel you can eat, or you have to eat. One of my favorite things to do with my kids, if you ever want to try this with yourself, I had them guess how many oranges they could eat. And then we went and bought big oranges, and you eat 2. Don't eat 1. Eat 2 oranges and then re-guess. Because now you have experience and a little bit of self-awareness. And after you eat 2 full oranges, yeah, just 2 back to back. I had my son who was 7 years old. He was like, I can eat 20. I was like, all right, eat these 2 large oranges back to back. And he ate them both, and he was like, maybe 6. So he's like, I don't think I can eat any more. Yeah, whatever answer you pick, that is the end of the lecture. Once you answer that, you are